Welcome to episode 3 of Resilience Testing Podcast, and this is the third podcast that we are hosting with one of our adapters of LitmusChaos. In episode 2, we recorded the episode with Flipkart team, who again were the one of the adapters of Litmus, and today we have Canonical team with us, who will be helping us with the adoption story of how Canonical has adopted LitmusChaos. Before we begin and dig deep into how does the adoption story looks like, we'll start with a quick round of introductions. So anyone can start with the introduction. Simon, Michael.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Michael Dimitri. I work as a software engineer at Canonical. I'm part of the team that developed and maintains the Canonical's observability stack, which is an opinionated, charmed HA solution based on the best-in-class open source observability tools. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. Yeah, Simon.
Yeah, I'm Simon Aronson. I've been leading I'm leading the Canonical observability teams. Have been in Canonical for 5 years, give or take. Have a background doing observability and reliability testing for the better part of a decade at this point. Prior to joining Canonical, I worked at Grafana doing similar things, but for their load testing product K6. Yeah, that's the short version of who I am.
Hi everyone, this is Karthik, one of the maintainers of the LitmusChaos project, and I lead the engineering for the resilience testing module here at Harness. So glad to be on this podcast.
Thanks everyone for your introductions. Now I'll just quickly introduce myself as well. So my name is Pritesh and I'm the community manager at LitmusChaos and DevRel engineer at Harness, and I lead all the initiatives of the community initiatives at LitmusChaos, and I'm excited to have you all in today's podcast. Since you already gave your introductions, I just want to know that can you tell us more about what you guys do at Canonical, and can you also tell us about what Juju is? And for someone who's hearing it for the first time, could you just elaborate in that way?
Definitely. So at Canonical, we work on the observability offering. When we say observability, we mean observability as a broad term, not as narrow as only telemetry collection, but we also include reliability testing, we include chaos engineering, load testing, and so on as part of that sort of umbrella of products. More specifically, Michael and I are both working on parts that have to do with these more esoteric parts of observability, and tracing and profiling are the main focuses for us. We deliver this through something called charms, which is part of which is part of the Juju story. So I'll just briefly explain that as well. So Juju is Canonical's orchestrator for clouds. Essentially, it aims to be a way for you to operate workloads across any substrate with operational knowledge embedded into these workloads as automation. So if you're a company that wants to do, let's say, observability, or you want to get started doing chaos engineering, you'd be able to quickly and easily deploy that together with the industry best practices for automation and visualization. Relate those things together using Juju integrations, and you would have a ready-to-go solution without having to go through all of the toil of manually integrating it and configuring it and so on. As I said, the parts that we are responsible for delivering are the charms. Charms are somewhat akin to Kubernetes controllers or Kubernetes operators, but they operate on a different level where they can be run on multiple types of substrates. Let's say that you have a virtual machine or a physical machine in your data center. You'd be able to run your operators on those as well as on Kubernetes. So it allows you to easily move between these different substrates. Say you have a public cloud, AWS, let's say, or GCP, and you now want to move into your own data center onto an OpenStack or whatnot, then you'd have those options using Juju as a layer on top of those substrates. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
So the observability offering that we are providing is divided into two different flavors. You can either go for what we call the Canonical Observability Stack Lite, which is a solution that is meant to work very well for getting basic observability up in near edge or resource constrained environments. These are not like novel new projects, but it is a collection of best-in-class projects like Grafana, Prometheus, Loki, Alert Manager, and so on. If you, however, want to run at a bigger scale and you are in an enterprise environment, let's say, we also have the actual Canonical Observability Stack, which includes more AJ-enabled primitives and a way to scale your deployment past a few hundred machines and into like a serious scale, let's say. It's the same type of components, things you already know and love, like Grafana, Loki, Prometheus, or no, not Prometheus, Mimir, Tempo, Pyroscope, and now, as of maybe 6 months ago, also LitmusChaos for your chaos engineering needs.
Yeah, it's
All
actually
of them
awesome.
are free and open source. Anyone can use them, deploy them easily on their data centers or on their private laptops or wherever they want to run them. Of course, there's a commercial angle, but let's not dive deeper into that on this podcast.
That's great. Just curious. So you've used Litmus as part of the larger set of cloud native tooling as part of your offering. Because I think to a great extent, chaos engineering tools also fall under the observability space. If you look at it that way, I think that's how CNCF also sort of categorizes it today in their landscape chart. But did you also consider using Litmus for testing out your own operators or your own orchestrator? Is that something that you've been doing as well, or is it something that you provide as part of your package for other people to sort of consume through your Juju observability platform?
Right. So that is something that we are looking to do. We have done some of it, but not as extensively as we would like to. I think you're completely right, Karthik, that observability and chaos engineering are very closely related. Mainly in the sense, I believe that observability serves as your eyes, but if you are not experimenting with different failure modes, then you won't know whether your eyes are able to see the issues that you could encounter until they actually happen, and then it's probably too late if you are not already prepared to handle them. So definitely we use it to try out the AJ-ness of our products and that they survive crashes and the reschedulings and so on. So for sure it's something that we also make use of internally.
Awesome. Great to know. So yeah, there are a good number of chaos engineering tools out there, some of them under CNCF, listed in the landscape, some of them sort of outside the purview of CNCF. What were the criteria you were looking for in a chaos engineering tool to introduce as part of your platform? Was there any architectural considerations, or did you have certain capabilities or features in mind? And how did you sort of end up using LitmusChaos? Just trying to see what the journey was like.
Yeah, I can answer that. So I think when we started with the problem itself. So how do we validate that our charmed observability offering keeps its reliability promise under the certain failure conditions, right? And as Simon mentioned, we were planning, or we had two things in mind, basically, that we need to get our observability stack on its own resilience tested. You don't want to risk going blind during the time where you need visibility. But also as an observability platform, we need to offer that to users so that they can verify their live deployments to be ready basically when there happens any service disruptions. So we defined a certain like selection criteria, I would say, to begin with. And I guess these can fall into several buckets. So one of which platform fit, that it's open source, is Kubernetes native, it's production stable, there's active contributions to the project, which is something that can give us confidence in the long-term momentum, basically. And of course, does it have a rich library of experiments that we can use to inject different types of faults into our system? And does it offer like an automation friendly way so that we can integrate it easily with our operated type of workflows? And yeah, we evaluated the different solutions out there. We have Chaos. I think we've looked into Chaos Monkey, Chaos Toolkit, Powerful Seal, and there's the K6 Disruptor, the Grafana extension, right? And the thing is, some were very narrow in scope, some were tied to a specific ecosystem, some were not actively maintained. So I think we made a sensible decision going with LitmusChaos. It was an overall fit, basically. It had this balance between capability and maturity, right?
Awesome. That's great to know. I think it's a good validation of the project operations, I would say. Litmus is a fairly old project, I would say. It's been around for close to around 7 years now, 7.5, 8 years now. The contributions have continued to flow in. A lot of people are making use of it. A lot of bugs have been fixed along the way. So like you said, this is the fact that you've selected it on the basis of, like you said, the capability versus maturity sweet spot was there is great validation for the project itself. Thanks for sharing that detail. I'm curious to understand if you picked the core, that is, did you just pick the operator, the chaos operator, and the experiments, and you're providing some kind of a management layer on top of that yourself as part of the platform, or is it something that you're using the entire control plane of Litmus alongside all the current portal that it provides for users to use? What's the nature of the integration, and how are people using it today? It's something we'd be interested to know.
Yeah, so we basically took the Litmus upstream project as is in terms of the control plane components, and we tried to integrate that into the charm world, right? So as Simon explained, charms are basically operational knowledge and expertise baked in along with the upstream component. So what we did is basically took some of those operational knowledge to try and automate some parts of it. There are still some items in the roadmap, I would say. Certain parts we can even automate even more, but it's mainly now concerned or about the deployment of Litmus into the Juju realm and some of the day two operations of that as well.
Got it. But indeed, as you're saying, Karthik, we are including the portal for doing browser-based initiation of experiments and so on. So all of those parts are included as well. We are trying to keep it, in a sense, very familiar to users who already know how to work with the product, while still making it like a much lighter lift to get started than if you were to set everything up and configure it yourself.
Got it. Got it. So we've had a wide cross section of people using Litmus for different use cases, right? A lot of the times it's about trying to validate some of the new services that they're onboarding, or sometimes new environments that they're new production environments or pre-prod environments, shared environments that they're building, which they would like to validate. And like you said, migrations from one cloud to another, or they're moving something on premise, moving out something from their data centers into the cloud. So one of the first things they would do is resilience validation, right? There are a lot of new dependencies that they are sort of onboarding when they move their applications, or when they're setting up new environments. So maybe a lot of managed services, a new set of hosted infra, etc. So people would like to use experiments to figure out what happens when there are failures. And then there's one group of users, one cross-section of users who are not doing this only when they are doing this kind of large-scale migrations or these kind of activities, but they're also doing it very regularly as part of a release cadence, right? As part of what they would do when they're trying to release a new version of an existing component. And they probably integrated it as part of their CI/CD pipelines, or they've got some kind of a schedule that's in operations to run, so that even as you deploy into your staging environment at a specific point of time, you're also doing experiments. So these are some classic use cases of how the tool is getting used today. So what's the general usage trend that you've seen, or how do you anticipate people using Litmus as part of the broader Charms Juju ecosystem?
I think that's exactly it. I think you're exactly right. I do envision people using it mainly to start with, at least as part of their staging procedures, and ensuring that, okay, when we release something to staging, it's solid, it works. We are passing all of our observability, or all of our reliability criterias there. It's still very early for us, given that it hasn't been out for a very long time, meaning that we don't have that much data yet on how it's actually being used in production, or by actual companies. I think if I were to fancy a guess, the whole idea that, for instance, Gremlin and others were talking about years ago with continuously doing chaos engineering in production, I think that's still a premise that I envision that users will at some point get to. But I think at this point in time, it's more likely that they will run it in a more controlled fashion,
Yeah.
before, start to walk before they get to running and so on.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. That's what we are seeing too. A lot of people, like you said, the crawl, walk, run sort of technique is how they're using chaos tooling. A lot of it is pre-prod. I think chaos in production is like the sign of a very, very mature organization that's very confident about its services, or they've got very, very, very good processes defined already, and very good guardrails defined already. We see that kind of maturity to be a little rare. So it's mostly for staging operations, like you said. I'm also curious about what you mentioned last time about K6, the fact that you're also providing support for people to run K6 as part of your observability platform. So, do you see load being used along with chaos as a classic use case? Do you see that as something that most people are asking for, or do you see them as sort of two very separate niche sort of type of evaluations or type of testing? What is your view
Uh,
around?
I think I'll have to answer that from my previous experience rather than from my canonical experience, since I used to work at K6 on K6 directly. I think the thing that I was seeing back then, which I think still holds true, is that one of the ways that you verify whether your resiliency practices actually work is by applying load and measuring what actually happens to a potential user. So let's say that you have a login flow and you've added a circuit breaker whenever something is not present or what it could be. Then you want to make sure that once you start to introduce that type of failure mode into your environment, that these circuit breakers or what have you actually kick in and do the right thing. That you don't end up with users having, 5 minutes of 500 error codes or HTTP status codes, but that they actually get caught into this loop and that it provides them with a sensible degraded experience or even the same type of experience throughout the turbulence that you are introducing. So I think they kind of go hand in hand. Uh, it's like multiple facets of the same problem, right? You have observability as the way to see into what's going on. You have chaos engineering as a way to act and introduce the synthetic failure, and you have load testing as a way to apply realistic access patterns while doing this thing. And you sort of have to assess them all together to get a holistic picture of what's going on in your environment.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's what we've heard from some of our users as well. Great to find validation on that, and great to see the platform sort of facilitating that flow, like you said, one-stop shop for observability, generating load, and also running experiments. And yeah, I think that makes sense. Are you satisfied with, or do you see there's a lot of scope for what we could do within the project to facilitate that sort of a integrated view better? For example, is there anything specific you would like to derive from an experiment or understand from an experiment in terms of, let's say, what metrics it emits from the experimentation platform, or anything that you feel that enhances this particular view that a user gets around observability around an experiment while there is load happening? And do you think that the platform today is sort of helping you achieve that view, or do you think there's something left wanting, something that we can improve on in the Litmus project to help that view come about?
I think you're doing a really good job at that already. There are some gaps that we have a issue up for in your repos, and I think there was some Google Summer of Code or similar going to happen to address parts of that with the visibility of the actual uh, of the actual fault injectors, I guess. The That would be the part that I think is still missing partly, because as I said, the idea of being able to see that things are progressing as you want them to progress, that's key to ensuring that the assumptions that you've made actually do happen. And being able to see that your fault injectors are performing as they should, that they are not throttled or capped or lack permissions or whatnot. That is also key to ensuring that you are introducing the type of turbulence that you want to see in your environment.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, definitely open to collaborating with you on improving that aspect of the project. Like you said, yeah, there is a ticket open. I think there's probably some, it's part of the LFX mentorship program, I think. So we should
Right,
get
that's what it was.
out this very soon on that. Yeah, great to know.
And I think, Michael, you've been part of those conversations as well, right? As part of the issue, or the team has at least,
Yeah.
with some ideas of what we want to see.
Yeah, I think we're pretty looped in the whole story.
And another question about the faults themselves and the experiments, right? So Litmus has a fair number of Kubernetes-specific faults. But have you ever run into a situation where you needed something bespoke, something that's not there as part of the fault library today? Some experiment scenarios where, let's say, you feel that as users of the charms in the Juju framework, um, there are a certain type of faults that would benefit the users more if they are available as some kind of out-of-the-box templates for them to directly leverage something that's not there today. Or do you think we need to construct something with what's already there for them to use, leverage better, readily? Do you feel the need for such a construct, or do you feel the users are fairly comfortable building what they would like to build and run it? How do you view that today? Do you have certain ideas about what you would like your users to run when they use your platform?
The catalog of available providers and experiments is quite substantial, I would say. It's quite complete in many senses. The one thing that comes to mind is that we still don't have a driver for driving Juju as part of an experiment. There are certain situations that Juju could end up in that would be useful for us to be able to simulate as well. I think that is something we can talk about and see how we could potentially collaborate and contribute such an integration to LitmusChaos, but that would be the thing that comes to mind. Do you have anything else, Michael?
Yeah, I think this aligns naturally with something that we were thinking about, which is like opinionated chaos and defining experiments that are workload specific, which kind of fits with the whole model of charms being encoding the operational knowledge of stuff. So why don't we include experiments as well? So it's kind of going from the generic type of bolt injection, like killing random pods or injecting CPU stress on some containers. These are nice experiments to have and can be applied to any pod. It's useful to be there, but I think a more domain-aware experiment, if something like a charmed database is running, right? And one domain-aware experiment can be like you kill the primary DB replica, right? During rewrites, and you would expect that this would give you more confidence in the failover mechanisms, basically. So we're kind of exploring the idea of having the charm also, the charm authors basically define their workload-specific experiments and use our offering to run those experiments, basically. This is still not there yet, but I think it's a good opportunity to like gather feedback and see what people think. If this is something that would be useful to them, we can go ahead and do that, I guess.
Awesome. Sounds great. So there is a tool, a bootstrapping tool that's available as part of Litmus that helps you write your own faults. And that's something that we could also look at. And maybe there's something that we can improve that sort of accommodate your use cases as well. So we can definitely work towards that, can collaborate on it.
I think it's interesting, or rather, I think it deserves some explaining of how we are organized in Canonical. So, as for the charm delivery pipeline, so to speak, or charm maintenance lifecycle, we have domain experts in multiple areas that are working on these charms and delivering them to the wider community, meaning that we have experts on Postgres, experts on MySQL, on OpenSearch or whatever it might be. And while chaos generally is somewhat context sensitive in the sense like how did you set it up, what's the underlying substrates and infrastructure and so on, that there are certain, as Michael is saying, certain domain specific failure modes that always are there, like a split brain would be one of those for a database. And having those experts being able to encode those into reusable faults that a user can just plug in and run to see that it's actually working. I think that will be immensely helpful for our users. But as you were saying, Michael, we don't really know yet whether that's something the community actually wants or if it is us anticipating a need that doesn't exist. So we're more than happy to get anyone listening to this to feedback on that plan and whether we should do rethink that or whether that's a direction that would be helpful.
Great. Awesome.
Okay, since we have been into discussions about the integrations, about Juju and LitmusChaos and observability and everything else, would you mind walking us through how actually LitmusChaos is integrated into your stack, and what did you have to build to make it work inside of Juju?
Right. So as we mentioned briefly, the charms are basically a layer on top of the existing upstream. So we took LitmusChaos and we charmed it, and I'm going to show you what does that mean. Mimicking the actual components of the control plane, let's say, so that it's easier for users who are familiar with the tool to get up and started with LitmusChaos in the charm world. So I can show you something to walk you through the UX of this whole thing. Right. So I want to walk you through the UX of how to use Juju, our charmed LitmusChaos solution, and all of these stuff. So currently I have my local environment here, and we need a couple of prerequisites covered before we can start. So what I have is I have the Juju CLI tool, probably make that bigger as well. You can install that via snaps or whatever you can use. And I also have a local Kubernetes environment running, which is micro-K8s. Now, of course, this is just for the demo purpose. Probably in a production-ready environment, you should use something else like Canonical Kubernetes on a multi-node setup or something. But anyways, I have the Kubernetes cluster running. It already has a couple of pods. I will walk through them. But anyways, Juju has this concept of, so Juju now has this Juju has a CLI tool where we interact with the charms and do basically the stuff we need. But to get started, Juju has this concept of models. So if you're from a Kubernetes background, a model is just a Kubernetes namespace, right? So I have here a couple of interesting namespaces, which is the Litmus control plane, and then another namespace we'll be using, which is the model under test. I was very verbose with the naming, but just to make it clear. Now, the Litmus control plane is basically where we will deploy our Litmus control plane components in hopes that we can use that to run experiments on that other namespace that has some workload running, right? Okay, so in that Juju model, I already deployed before the demo some charms. I did that just to save some time because deploying a charm, if it's the first time, requires pulling OCI images of the upstream and some other components, so that might take some time. So I just deployed it beforehand. So here you can see that there are 4 charms. Now a charm will basically correspond to a pod, right? Now we have the Litmus auth, Litmus backend, LitmusChaos center, and MongoDB, which you can already see that this is somehow how the Litmus control plane is architectured. So we have a different charm for each component, which corresponds to a different pod, right, in that namespace. Now, you might be in a regular deployment, you'll just see one container, right, running, which should be the Litmus auth container running. But because this is a charm, so there's a second container here, which is the sidecar container of the charm. So we mentioned that the charm should manage the life cycle of the application. So it does that by injecting a sidecar container next to the pod, so it can do those different sorts of like automation and stuff there. And this next to each image or next to each workload container is the charm container running and operating that workload. This is the same for auth, backend, and Chaos Center and MongoDB. Don't mind this one. This is something related to Juju. Anyways, what I have now is that we have these several applications, charms deployed, but they're in block state with some message saying that we're missing some integrations, right? For example, the auth component is missing database and Litmus auth integrations. Okay, what are those? And this is where Juju's declarative approach comes into picture. You would have to configure somehow that the auth needs to talk to the database, needs to talk to Mongo. So you need to configure that from the application somehow, right? But with Juju, you can just run Juju integrate. You tell it what you want to do, not how you do it. I want to integrate auth with the database, right? And in the background, the controller and the charm will start, the Juju controller will give commands to the charm, so it will start doing stuff. So you can see here MongoDB is now executing. It's doing something in the background. We have logs and everything if you want to see what's happening. But essentially what's happening is that MongoDB and auth are now trying to communicate with each other, sending data to each other on how they can connect, basically. So you can imagine that MongoDB is sending its endpoint, port, credentials, whatever, to the auth component so that the auth can actually connect to it. And now that it's active, you can see that the missing integration. This is just a UX part to know what's wrong with the block state. Now let me repeat that for the other integrations as well. We'll integrate the backend with MongoDB, and the auth server also needs some info from the backend. This is all upstream configuration, right? This is not something specific to the charm. This is just how upstream is architectured, right? Where there is part of the configuration that auth needs to communicate with the backend for some info. So we just integrate them. And also Chaos Center needs to integrate with both the auth, with both the auth and the backend. This should feel very familiar to existing users of LitmusChaos, where you know that there is some sort of communication happening between these two components. So you should just integrate them and expect things to work as you're familiar with. Once this reaches an active idle state, so it's not executing anything, then everything's ready. So now we can say that we have the control plane deployed. And if we go to, I think I can actually do that now. We can actually check the portal, right? So let me go to that IP. Here you go.
Just to chime in on that, all of the things that you would generally do to get this up and running, like providing config maps, providing secrets, all of that was taken care of by the commands that Michael just ran. So as a user, you don't have to care about that.
Right. Yeah. We have a Terraform module that encapsulates all of these details, all of these integrations, all of the user secrets and everything. So you don't have to run all of these Juju commands yourself. But I chose to do it that way so we can see what the underlying commands are. Now, part of this...
that was going to be my next question. Is there a way to sort of put this all into some kind of a declarative workflow? I think you just answered it.
Yeah, exactly. And part of the deployment is that the charm basically creates a new user, a charm user, so that it can manage all the stuff it needs. And the user chooses the password through Juju secrets. So if I think I have a command for that. Yeah. So you basically you can add a Juju secret, say I want the admin password, and the charm password, and you pass the secret ID to the charm. Let's not get into the details of that, but this is all encapsulated in just a Terraform module that you can just Terraform apply right away. Right, let me enter the password. The demo effect.
Litmus123.
No, I think it's I'm using the other account. It was uppercase C. So yeah, the charm creates its own project that's called charm project, so it can create the infrastructure and some other stuff on behalf of the user, but in its own separate project, so it doesn't mess with the admin default project, right? This is a design choice we chose to follow, just to not mess up with or give the charm admin access to everything, so we can reduce the blast radius a bit. Anyways, so now you have an up and running control plane. Ideally, with the Terraform module, this should be up within like a few minutes tops, and everything's nice. So let's say you want to run an experiment on some workload, right? So I have another namespace or model here that has a workload, which is, in this case, as an example, is just the low-key workload is up and running. Let's say I want to chaos test, inject some chaos into low-key, right? Normally, I would go through the UI, and first I would create an environment. Then that will give me a Kubernetes manifest that I need to apply so that we can create some of the execution plane components in that namespace. And this is where also Juju, or the charmed solution, comes handy. So what I can do is, instead of manually applying the Kubernetes manifests, we have another charm, which is called the Litmus infrastructure charm. And this charm is basically like I deployed it in the wrong namespace. So basically, this charm is like a signaling or a beacon charm, where you put it in a certain namespace, deploy it in a certain namespace, and then when it connects with the Chaos Center will provision all of the infrastructure needed in that namespace, right? So I want to test Loki in the model under test namespace, so I'll just deploy Litmus infrastructure there. And then quickly you should have that up and running, but it should remain in blocked state, right? Because it should be on its own, it does nothing. You should integrate it with with your control plane, basically. So let's see what that looks like. Here I'm also abstracting some details, because typically, because these are two different models. So when you integrate two components in two different models, this is cross-model relations, and it needs some special setup, or like running some certain Juju commands as well to be able to do that integration. But let's not get into the details of that. Oops. Infra. Once I do the integration, you should see that something is happening. The Chaos Center control plane is doing something in the background. And what we expect it to do is that, let's check the pods, actually. We should see that the execution plane components are being created, right, in that model under test. And if we go to the UI, you should already see this reflected here. So the Litmus infrastructure charm, it abstracted some of those details you had to do on your own. It applied the Kubernetes manifests, and you can expect, like, when you remove the relation, it will also delete the execution plane components. That should be ready in any second, and once it's ready, you can just create the experiment normally through the portal, and then you'll have your infrastructure provisioned here that you can use. We currently don't offer a way to run the experiments through Juju commands. You have to do that from the portal. Right, now that it's connected, everything's up and running. You can basically choose the infrastructure and run any experiment that you need on that specific namespace, right? Yeah, Simon, did I miss anything? Yeah.
No, that's excellent. That's exactly what we've been working on.
Yeah, that's basically it. That's the whole UX of how to use the charmed litmus in the Juju world. I hope it was clear.
So no manifest wrangling, no Kubernetes tinkering. You run a few commands, and everything is set up for you. So you don't have to be a chaos engineer yourself to be able to get started with the chaos engineering.
Right. And just to show the other part of this relation, if you can also remove the relation, right? So what you'd expect when you remove the relation between the infra and the chaos center, that it will go and delete all of these execution plane components. And it will basically delete the environment and any experiments running that you might have on that namespace. Yeah, I think that covers it.
I think that was awesome. The first step is always the hard one, setting this all up, getting to the point where your first infra is connected and you can run your experiment. But I think with this, that is simplified vastly. So I think people can get on to doing what they would like to experiment very quickly instead of spending time, like Simon said, trying to manipulate the manifests and trying to look at permissions and trying to move around IP addresses and things like that. So I think this is great.
Right. So now that you have seen this in practice and exactly how it unfolds, now imagine that you would be able to also integrate the chaos or the Litmus infrastructure charm to one of your actual workloads. Let's say you have a backend that you've been developing for your own internal product and you want to ensure that that works as you expect. Our idea at that point would be that you would be able to provide these type of experiments or these faults as part of your workload charm, if you will, so that you'd easily be able to integrate them. The faults would appear in Litmus, and you'd be able to run them without having to manually configure or set up a certain scenario yourself. And that's essentially the point that we are looking for feedback on. Would that be a helpful feature? Would that make things easier in production or in staging environments? Or are we barking up the wrong tree there? Or would people prefer to do it in the UI?
No, I think it's definitely the correct line of thinking. So in all our interactions, people who are getting on to chaos expect for help from the platform or recommendations from the platform on what to do next or what to prioritize in terms of what experiment to do first, what service to pick first, what should be my set of faults, what should be my validations, etc. There are some organizations, some folks who come with very well-structured ideas around what they want to execute using the tool. That's great, and I'm sure they'll have the freedom to do that. But there are a lot of others who want to get onto chaos engineering as a practice, but they're looking for some kind of help on how to begin. So I think these out-of-the-box templates or ready faults that are made available to them or are pre-configured, and all they have to do is just run. I think that's a very powerful concept. And as a team that's sort of built this entire Juju framework, and you keep building a lot of charms and a lot of integrations, and you're facilitating a lot of users who are trying to deploy into the cloud or doing migrations, etc. You've seen a lot of those workflows play out, and therefore you know what's best for somebody to try out. It's a really powerful set of recommendations that people will appreciate. So I think that's definitely a good way to think about it.
Yeah, and I think you're right in that if you are a mature organization and you have strong ideas of how you want to do things, you should definitely go ahead and do them that way. The big lift that Juju and Charms is providing is for those people that don't necessarily have a department that works on that specific discipline or that practice, but they still want to be able to harness some of the value that is in those disciplines, right? So if you don't have chaos engineers on your staff because you're doing some SaaS and that's your main business and you just don't have a lot of infra people, you should still be able to run your experiments and understand that your solution works as intended without having to hire dedicated chaos engineers that work on only that, right? So that's the sort of gap that we're trying to bridge with this whole encoded operational knowledge and so on.
Makes sense. Awesome.
All right. So we are at the end of the podcast. We'll be asking the final question that from your perspective, from your POV, what do you think the future of Litmus Chaos looks like?
I think the future for LitmusChaos is to continue down the beaten path, right? With the agentic sort of delivery processes that we are seeing becoming more and more prevalent in most engineering organizations, having access to powerful chaos engineering tools or reliability testing tools becomes kind of a ground floor hygiene thing that you will want to have in your organization. Uh, Agents ship code faster than any of us can keep up with. Uh, and to be able to rest assured that it works the way you intended and that it actually does the thing you want it to do, yeah, you will need these safety harnesses to guard you and tell you that everything is according to plan. So I think my read of the current developments is that chaos engineering will probably be an even more important practice going forward.
Yeah, I also think I was thinking about how can AI fit in the story. A different angle to what Simon was saying. I was reading this article about AI-driven resilience and how AI can be put in the loop along with observability and resilience testing so that it can generate smarter experiments. Observability can be the first layer where you have you have an understanding of the state of your system. You can then use AI to detect anomalies, certain patterns that might be issues, and it can actually generate like smart experiments. Use LitmusChaos to execute that, and then repeat the loop basically. So I think this will help in like generating more targeted experiments that will overall improve the systems, I guess.
If only there was a company out there that did something around this, providing like uh, accelerated DevOps and automation and chaos engineering and so on. That would have been superb, right?
I think that's what Harness is trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Edit.
Interesting. I also want to ask that while while doing this integration and while this during this entire adoption process, what are the key learnings that you would like to share on this podcast, if you have anything that you like want to share about the entire process or something like that?
I think one of the things that I would like to share is that people in general severely underestimate, I think, the value of good counterparts and having people that are engaged and interested in the thing that you are doing. And that was such a pleasant surprise, at least for me, when we first reached out and wanted to do something with LitmusChaos, that we were immediately very like nicely welcomed, and people were interested in from the Litmus side in what we were doing and how that could play out as something both beneficial to Litmus and beneficial to us. So I think when you are looking to integrate something into a solution that you're building, evaluating the organization or the sort of the team that is building and maintaining that piece of software becomes kind of paramount. And I have nothing but good things to say about Litmus from that whole experience. But I think people should do better due diligence on whether their counterparts are interested or whether they just see it as noise in the background, right?
Thank you. And thank you for actually going ahead and using this tool as part of your platform and sharing valuable feedback on how we can get better. Really looking forward to collaborate with you all.
Likewise.
So, as a part of the solutions that you guys are building, what do you think? What sort of impact it makes to an organization or a business? Like how well you put that in a conversation.
Right. I think it's exactly that I mentioned prior, right? That the value of these type of tools is no longer just a niceties, things to have, good things to have. It's becoming mission critical to be able to reason about whether your infrastructure actually does the thing you expect it to do. You want to be able to rest assured that if you're putting someone on call to manage your environments during odd hours or whatnot, that they have as little surprises as possible that they need to take care of. And the only way I know for doing that reliably is by using resilience testing tools like LitmusChaos, together with a strong observability aspect. So I think it's less of a look at this cool thing that we're doing and more of a how do you know what's going on if you're not testing it continuously. So that would be how I would enter those conversations with teams that don't know where to start or whether they need it or not.
Awesome. I think with that we are at the end of the today's podcast. I would like to thank everyone, Simon, Michael, Karthik, for joining us for this amazing podcast. And I'm pretty sure when this goes out, it will be super helpful and to all the users of Juju and also LitmusChaos, and to the community who wants to, who are planning to use this solutions and you want to understand about how to make their systems more resilient.
Thank you so much for having us. It was excellent being on the podcast.
Thank you.